What's good, everyone? This is Shane Dillon here with PUTINWORKTV. Thanks for tuning in.
Shane Dillon, welcome to Put in Work TV. We've enjoyed watching your journey as an artist in the New England music scene and really want to hear more about your story. Our focus is allowing our guests to tell their stories front and center without judgment or opinion. So let's dive in. How did it all begin?
So a lot of people know me as I'm a piano player, kind of first and foremost. I've been kind of playing the piano like my parents had me doing it since I was a little kid type shit. And yeah, so I kind of really came up through that. Like I studied jazz growing up and stuff like that. I was always writing music, playing all the time, piano lessons and stuff, and then just like writing my own music. I would say around like must have been 2017 or 18, I like really started like trying to like intentionally like kind of connect with other people in Boston, specifically like different artists, people doing their own stuff and like collaborating. I was always really big on the idea of like kind of like doing stuff with different styles of music. So like me kind of coming up as like this piano player with like kind of this background in jazz and like instrumental music, and then like kind of fusing that with different people in the city doing hip hop and R&B and all different sorts of stuff, just to kind of create like a new sound in a way.
Yeah, word. So you start off playing the piano, but you also have other influences. That's what I got. You feel me?
Yeah. Most definitely, yeah. It's like kind of, I feel like that was kind of like what really got me in, like to just doing music, was just like my background in piano. And I still kind of feel like even now, like I kind of feel like that's kind of how I center myself. That's like kind of like the big piece of my identity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely feel like I try to be like multifaceted in terms of like working with different kinds of artists, different mediums and stuff like that.
So how did you begin even, like, how did you get put onto the piano? Like your parents signed you up for a class, or you were a little kid and you wanted to play?
Pretty much, yeah. It was like that. Like as a little kid, my parents had me taking piano lessons. I remember the type of thing where it's like I was a little kid, they'd be like forcing me to practice and stuff like that. And then at like a certain point, it must have been when I was like in middle school or something, like I just like felt like I was really getting into it. I was like spending all my time practicing, like both like playing music. I would be like writing my own music, experimenting, stuff like that. And so even like as a kid, I feel like it kind of like it like channeled naturally from there into like what I'm doing now and just like making my own music.
Got you. Word. So where did you grow up?
I'm from Brooklyn, Mass.
What was it like growing up in Brooklyn?
It was cool. Yeah, I went to school there, obviously, and yeah, a bunch of friends there. Like I feel like not a ton of the people that I knew growing up were like doing music and the similar stuff, but there were a few people that were. And like the nice thing was like right close to the city too. So I remember as a kid going to the city, like going to like jam sessions and stuff at different venues and stuff like that.
Word. Dope. I'll be trying to lead.
Yeah.
You feel me? So how did you transition? Well, like not transition, but obviously you started playing the piano and you had interested in all the genres and putting your piano to work in those genres.
Yeah.
How did you make your like breakthrough on the scene into how most people know you today, like Shane Dillon with like Red Shades and C4 and etc. on the projects? So
for sure. So around the time, it was similar to around the time that I started. I had met some people at that point, but I had this idea I wanted to make like this big album that's like combining. It's the album that I released just last year in the fall. But what I wanted to do with that, I spent a long time doing it, but I wanted to really like combine my music with a bunch of like features from different voices that people in the city recognize. Like as you said, Red Shades, C4, Kofi Loss, Tayshawn Taylor, had a bunch of different artists on it. And yeah, like through that, it was honestly a process, because I felt like when I started doing the album, there were a lot of people that I just like, I didn't know nearly as many people as I did like now at this point. And so for a while, I was kind of like getting out there, like just trying to like network with people, like kind of like build like this like community of people that I had worked with and stuff. And yeah, and then just I feel like through putting on that album, through putting it together and all the different like parts of it, like I was able to like really connect with a lot of people. And then what was a cool thing was that it kind of fused in a way, or like transformed from the type of thing where it was like me like reaching out to people, like to kind of be on my shit, to the point where those people were like reaching out to me like in return, like whether it's like playing shows with them or like doing other projects with them. And I think that was the dopest part of it all.
Word. That's dope. But tell me, like, because the Boston scene is hella siloed and reclusive.
Yeah.
So I really want to know, like how did you meet C4? Like, who was the first person that you met that put you on to everyone else? If you could think back and figure out who that was.
I'm trying to think who. It was a while back. I think it must have been around 2018 or so that I really started meeting a lot of people. I remember there was one summer I was going to hella shows. C4 is actually one of the first people that I met I don't think he was the very first, but it was in that summer. I remember seeing him at a show a long time ago. I remember just being like, this kid has the craziest energy.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him and then connecting with him after, and then he's on 2 songs on the album. He's like a big part of it. Like I feel like I've done a bunch of stuff with him and him with me. I feel like we've been very attached for the past few years. But yeah, I remember meeting him and then connecting with him, and then through there, like I sent him like the couple songs on the album that was still like we're still working on at the time that he like worked on with me, and we finished for the album. And then, well, then there was like the pandemic, and also obviously that was like not much was going on for a while. But I remember he had like a bunch of shows he was just hitting me up for, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I feel like something about like our energies kind of matched, where he's the type of person that he's like very like driven, but also very like spontaneous in a way where it's like I feel like that's not something that a lot of artists have. I feel like it's something that more like people that play instruments have actually, where they're like very down to just like kind of like feel things out, kind of go with the flow and stuff like that. And I think some of our energies just kind of like matched, and so yeah.
So what motivates you as an artist to just keep creating?
I think it's like, I think about this a lot because it's like it's the type of thing to be an artist. It's like it's tough, honestly. There's a lot of like different pieces to the puzzle that you're always trying to put together and stuff. I think for me, I feel like even as a kid, I had it where it's like I just had like an idea of like it would be crazy doing this with this person and at this event and all that, and so I just feel like I've just always been like really driven, like very like kind of like focused on the final project and the product, and like whatever pieces of the puzzle have to come in, they just find a way to come together. I'm definitely the type of person like I definitely take my time with shit. Like this album, the album that I put out last year was a good example of that. It took like over 2 years, but I'm just the type of person that's like I'm very much like a perfectionist in a way too, where it's like all the different elements have to be like perfect on their own, and it all just come together when the moment's finally right.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so talk to me about the first time you created your own independent song.
So it's like, as a kid and stuff, I was always, like I said, like at the piano, I was always like playing around, like writing music and stuff like that. But there's definitely a difference between just like that and like actually like putting out as like something to hear, like something people are actually gonna listen to, type shit. And so I think it was around the time I had like released some stuff before that was more like kind of like jazz type thing, but it was with that it was more just about like I just wanted to put something out. And so I had a couple albums that I did when I was younger, but like I didn't really promote them much or anything. It's kind of just like got in the studio with some other musicians, just recorded stuff. We did one live album as well. But I feel like this album, the one that I put out last year, Star or Lonely Dreamer, was like the first time I was like super intentional about every part of the process, from the songwriting to who was going to be featured on it, to getting the whole band and all the different artists, to like the rollout, to a bunch of videos and photo shoots and stuff and all that, and just like having one concept that all the different pieces fit together to.
Yeah, that's dope. Okay, word. And how would you say the music changed your life?
I think it's changed my life since I was a kid, honestly. I think it's like something I've just always been like super passionate about, and it's the type of thing that just feels like very important to me, if that makes any sense, where it's like even like it just feels like something that I'm always like striving for. It's like I have like this idea in my head of whether it's like a song that needs to come out, or like just like a sound, or just like experimenting with like new ideas and stuff. It's just like something that's like whatever I gotta do, it's just like I have to execute. I'm like a very like kind of like results minded person in a way, if that makes sense, where it's like I have like this idea and I'm just like whatever needs to be done, I'm just gonna keep going until it happens.
And okay, so I'm a little ignorant, you feel me?
Yeah.
But I know you play the piano on a lot of your songs.
Right.
But do you actually record on your songs too?
Yeah, right. So a lot of people don't know actually. I mean, a lot of people see me playing piano and stuff, but my songs most of the time feature like a lot of different other live instruments.
Yeah.
But some people don't know. Piano is actually like the only instrument that I play myself, but what I am like a composer as well. So what I do by that is I like write all the different parts for all the different instruments, and then like bring on, like I know a bunch of musicians in Boston that I've been like fortunate enough to meet, and just like I like have this like idea and I like write the score, and then I bring in like a saxophone and a drummer and like I don't know, a violin or something like that, just to kind of like flesh it out a little bit more. In terms of like my music, I kind of started as that, whereas like when I was growing up, like studying jazz and stuff, I was doing a lot of like mostly like composition stuff, like writing for instruments. And then as I started working with more hip hop and R&B artists in the city, I kind of kind of fuse that in a way with like more like traditional like production elements with like synths and stuff and like drums and all that. And now I feel like what I'm always trying to do, like now at this stage in my career, is like trying to find interesting ways to kind of like combine the two in like different combinations, if that makes sense. So it's like, might be one song where it's like all live instruments and then a rapper on top of it. Or it might be something where it's just the piano and then I'm like producing heavy around it or whatever. But just like to combine different like parts from like different like from the instruments and then from the production to create something kind of new.
Word. So, in your journey as an artist, in your process of, composing and creating beats, like, where do you think you've grown the most, and like, where do you think you have more places to grow?
Yeah,
that makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would say I feel like I definitely feel like I've gotten better, and I feel like I still am getting better just in terms of like my playing, my writing, all that. I feel like I'm like continuing to improve, and I kind of like see the ways that I like can get better and stuff like that. I think one big way though is just like kind of like my open-mindedness in a way, where it's like I think like although I do feel like I've like gotten better, obviously I feel like I was always like since a kid I was like playing the piano and stuff. And so I feel like just like I've been able to like kind of like experiment with like different ways to combine the piano into whatever it is I'm doing, whether it's like a live show with someone or like a production or whatever. But just like the different ways, like whether it's the piano front and center and like making a song around that, or using a piano with in a very specific way with a certain effect and stuff like that. I feel like I like try to always be like mindful of like the big picture, like whatever it is, and just like using like the different elements in a way that's unique to each particular project.
Is there any genres that you feel like you haven't touched yet that you want to touch with your piano?
Oh, that's a good question. So I feel like for me, I kind of started with like learning jazz and stuff. That was as a kid, that's what I was playing. And then with this last album, I feel like it was kind of like my music plus hip hop, which was cool. But I felt like one thing that was kind of missing from the whole thing was like kind of R&B, which I've always kind of had like a very like soft spot for in a way. Like a lot of time that's what I listen to most of the time now, I feel like. And so a lot of what I've been doing now kind of I feel like fits into that category, both with a lot of people I play live shows with. And like a lot of the music that I'm like writing now, I like really love just like that kind of like laid back type of flow and stuff like that.
Okay. So how do you feel about the like plethora of artists? How do you feel about the plethora of artists that you've worked with so far? And like really what that means for the New England music scene just moving forward.
Yeah, I think I've been definitely fortunate enough. That's something I'm like really proud of, is just the number of people that I've gotten to do stuff with, whether it's people that I'm playing shows with or people that I've featured on my album or I was featured on their stuff. And it's crazy that the thing to me is that despite Boston like being like a relatively small city and people give a lot of shit about like the community, the music community is like it's not the biggest thing, but I still definitely feel like I'm just meeting new people all the time. Like I feel like I haven't like tapped out yet in terms of it hasn't been like I've met everyone here yet, and just like people that like genuinely inspire me, just like doing their own thing and stuff.
Yeah. Cool. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? Shane Dillon is 2027.
Yes,
sir. What I'm saying? What do you see? What do you think the future has in store for you?
Big question. I think something that I always like I'm trying to do now, but I continue as I like grow throughout my career, is like to keep trying to do stuff with like bigger and bigger artists and stuff like that, and like be featured on other people's shit, but also like keep doing my own thing at the same time. Like I don't want to lose that. And I think something that was cool about like to me about the album when I put it out is that there were all these artists on it that people recognized, and when we did like the album release show back in November, there are a lot of big names that people in Boston that follow the music scene might know their music, but having it be like, despite having all these big people, having to be something that I myself like curated and brought them all onto like for their own song, their own like kind of piece of the puzzle, was something that was super fire to me. And that's something I want to continue to kind of keep pursuing as I'm maturing and getting more developed in this music shit. Like, not only, like, playing on other people's tracks and lending my talents here and there, but also continue to, like, kind of, like, own my own thing, keep writing my own music and bringing people on for that purpose as well.
Right. What do you think it is about music that, like... Let me run it back. Why do you think the piano is so impactful, and considering that it's like your instrument of choice that you spent like the majority of your life using?
Right.
Like, why do you think it has such an effect on people, and like, why do you love it?
Yeah. It's crazy because the piano is probably like one of the oldest instruments in all of like humanity or whatever. Like like probably like 2,000 years ago they were playing pianos and shit. But I think for me, like, something about it is that, like, just for whatever reason that I've been playing it all my life, I feel like so, like, it's almost like just like an extension of me at this point, where it's like I don't even have to like think sometimes about like playing the chords or playing the notes or whatever. It's just like I can kind of just like think through the instrument in a way, which I think like as an artist that's kind of like, for a lot of people that's like kind of the goal, is that like whatever like medium it is just like so natural to you that you just like kind of express yourself through it. So I think it just definitely like feels just like something about it too. It's like I like when I'm playing the piano, I'm really conscious and like I'm able to like speak to people in a way where it's like I'm trying to like almost like sing to them through the melodies and stuff like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah.
like, the majority of these questions I definitely am coming up with. You feel me?
Word.
Half of these I got, half
Word.
of them I'm with. You feel me?
This life's crazy.
Yeah, real life. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So talk to me about like artists in the scene that you're looking forward to working with that you haven't worked with yet.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. There's definitely been a bunch of people that even just in the past year or so that I've gotten to work with a lot. Like, that were people that I had like, people that had been a goal of mine to work with, like, was it Miranda Ray, Notebook P, CD Rose, a bunch of people that like I had like followed before and I knew of them, and it was like super dope to me when they reached out to me to like be part of them, whether playing shows or doing other stuff with them. There are definitely a few people in Boston that I would love to do stuff with that I haven't yet, or that I have had only like limited like kind of exposure with, whether like Oompa or Van Buren Records. A lot of people that it's like I try to be like super conscious of like what's going on in the scene. Like I follow a lot of people and try to like stay in tune with all that. I think I have, ever since I like kind of intentionally tried like connecting with people in Boston, I've always been like very interested, not just like what these people are, how they can serve me, but just like what they're doing on their own, because that's the most inspiring thing, is when someone else like has their own vision, they're doing all this shit to carry it out on their own. So I try to be mindful of that, you know?
Yeah. Did I ask you what I think the most substantial thing of your career is?
The most substantial thing?
I thought the most substantial moment or project or whatever.
The
biggest thing in your entire life of making music. Have I asked you that?
I don't think so.
All right.
Yeah.
So Shane, what is the most impactful, substantial event, thing, song that you've released in your music career that you would like, that you would point out?
Yeah. To me, it's when we did the album release show for my album that I put out for A Star, Lonely Dreamer. And I think about that, and like I still like remember that night. It's like I think back to it so much. Like I remember being so stressed about like all the pieces I've been putting all together, and then just watching like all come to life. I remember it was like a surreal type of moment. The type of thing, like in certain moments when something really big happens to you, you almost feel like you're not processing in the moment. You're just like kind of like just like floating on a cloud, and then like later when you like kind of like come back to earth, you're like, wow, that really happened. That was definitely how I felt that night. But I remember what was cool about it is that I had spent like 2 years working on this album. Like I'd shown it to some people, but like for most of it, had just kind of I'd been keeping like all these songs like as files on my phone. So this was really, and we'd release a couple of them as singles, but this was really the big moment we were like kind of like putting out to show people. And I remember it was like 2 weeks or so before the album actually dropped. So it was like a little, like I wanted to be like kind of like a teaser for it in a way. And we had like the live band and everything. So it was like a live version of what would eventually be on the album a couple weeks later. And I just remember we did at this place on Newberry Street, and I remember playing it before. I was like, fuck, I don't know if anyone's going to show up. I don't know who's going to be there or anything. I'm just going to do it anyway. And then that night, like watching all the artists who I'd worked with, like a couple of them, like we had only linked like once or twice to do it, but like having them all in the same place with all these other people that I had gotten to know through the community and like family and friends and all that, just like in the same room, like experiencing it all together. It was definitely like a lifetime type moment.
Word, bro. Hit me with the, what do you call it? What's been the hardest part of your journey as an artist?
Yeah, I think the hardest part I have to say is just like continuing to be patient when things do take a long time. And like anyone that does music or any sort of art, I feel like will relate to that, is that like things like truly do come with time. Like it takes time, whether it's practicing and getting better at your shit or like putting it all together. No matter what you're doing, I feel like there's the element of like just having to wait for something as an artist, and sometimes that can be tough, especially when you see like everyone dropping around you. It's easy to get like impatient and be like, fuck, what am I doing now? But just like really like staying true to your vision, staying true to yourself, and just like trusting that things truly do come in time is something that I feel like I've like learned to, and I've like come to like a deeper understanding with, in a way, I'd say.
So what advice do you have for artists who would like want to follow a similar path as you as a super duper as a composer?
Yeah.
And my fault, also don't want to put you in a box. Is that
Oh,
right?
no.
Okay.
I feel like what I call myself, I still feel like piano is like front and center, but I would call myself like a producer and composer at the same time, is the way I usually introduce myself. But my advice would be to keep in mind like what makes you yourself artistically, and because I feel like it's really easy to, as we're seeing people, there's so many people, like the music industry is very oversaturated with other artists and like with like people giving you advice and stuff, which can be useful, but I feel there's a place for all that, and it's really important. Something that I've tried to continue to do is like keep who you are as like a artistic individual front and center, and don't let anyone's advice or like the imposter syndrome that can come with that like kind of get in the way of that. Of course it's important to like listen to people, like what their comments are is all extremely important and all, but to kind of don't lose track of like the ultimate vision, I would say.
Okay, is there anything in your story you feel like I haven't touched upon? Like something I'm like really just missing? Because I really try to get as much as possible. So go.
I could just talk about, so after I released this album that came out last year, I felt like that was like a chapter in my life that's like kind of like, the chapter was like a 2-year long chapter, but it was kind of like came to a close. And I remember thinking for a minute like kind of what I was going to do after that. And I think that the way I had done the album, where it was combining like the instruments with these different artists and stuff, was something that was really cool to me and I was like passionate about, but I was ready to kind of like continue in a way where we're still doing a similar type of thing where it's like using these instruments and stuff, but I didn't want to like kind of put myself in a box with that, as you were saying also before. And so I think what I've been trying to do now is like be super intentional about different ways that I can kind of use the things I know how to do. Like as like a trained musician, there's a lot of ways that I can kind of use that to kind of do certain different projects, whether it's like me writing songs with people, whether it's me playing on other people's stuff, whether it's me using these other instruments I know.
Yeah.
And something I always think about is that I never want what I do, despite me having this background in like music education and stuff, and I went to a college for it and everything. I never want my music to be like too like intellectual or cerebral in a way, where it's kind of, the goal is that despite me having this like kind of like formal training, to use that in a way that's just like kind of like a pure like emotional expression and something that people can relate to. Like I don't want it to be, I think that was something that, being at my school and being in the music school, that was something that not everyone felt the same way about, which was interesting to me. But I definitely want my music to be something that like almost everyone can relate to, not the type of thing where it's like you have to have like studied X, Y, and Z and listen to these albums to be able to like comprehend it. It's like, I really think that music is like something that's like about like connecting myself to a person that's experiencing it, whether they're playing with me or listening or whatever. And so I think like I try to be like kind of emotionally driven with my songs first and foremost.
Bro, so if there's one track that people need to hear by Shane Dillon, what's the track?
The one song, I think, man, it's tough because every song on my album is like my baby, you know what I mean? But if there's one song to listen to, I would say it has to be Around Me. That's the one I put. It was like the last single we put out before the whole album, featuring Red Shades, C4, Jolie Gordon, who's a singer from my school. That was one of my favorite ones. I remember putting the whole project together. It's like I was really passionate about, really wanting people to hear. And so that's the one.
Word. I feel like we hit a lot of points.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you got if you have any last words for our audience, love to hear it. Oh yeah, look at the camera.
Oh yeah. So I'm Shane Dillon. For anyone that doesn't know me, I'm a piano player, composer, producer. I've been really fortunate over the past few years to get to work with a ton of different musicians in Boston, different rappers, artists, and all that. And also to connect with people just through the scene, through shows, through the music I've put out and played on with other people. I think at this stage in my career, after I released this album that I put out last November called A Star or a Lonely Dreamer, what I've really been trying to do is just work on a ton of different people's shit, to play on different people's albums, produce stuff with them, and yeah, I've just really been like passionate about like kind of getting myself out there. Like I'm trying to like build a whole list of like production credits and all, get my name out as much as possible. My name's Shane Dillon. Thanks to PUTINWORKTV for having me. Excited for y'all to see this.